Hello, welcome to the January 17th, 2023 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test and then we will go ahead and get started. Bear with me just for a moment. All right, my monitoring computer sounds fine. My name is Greg Undo. I am the host of the live stream today. If you've not attended a Club Cubase live stream before, how it works is you can submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de or simply ask questions in the live chat field. We'll try to go through all of the questions chronologically as they come in. My ability to probably answer questions will soon be eclipsed. So if you do not see a particular, like an immediate response to your question, realize that I'm going to try my best over the course of the live stream to catch up to be real time. So if you don't get an immediate response, if we could refrain from asking the same question multiple times, that just kind of slows down the whole process. And when asking questions, if we could indicate which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or other Steinberg programs, and what version number. So if it's version 10, 11, 12. Also, if you could indicate which operating system that you're using, that information is helpful. We should have all of the topics that are covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field with timestamps. So it'll be several hours after the live stream. I have to go through and rewatch the live stream and type up all the questions with the timestamps. So you could use that as a reference point for different topics covered today. Also, if you wanted to see topics that have been covered on previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been incredibly kind and generous to create that website as a wonderful resource of information. We have two people that serve as moderators. We have Agent K and Jazz Dude, and I see that they're both on, which is wonderful. So they're not Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better community and to help out. So we want to give special thanks to them. Also, we want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude for his work on the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information outside of live streams where you find very relevant and pertinent information and tutorials to make your Steinberg experience better. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America as a product specialist, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'll be the host for the live stream. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States in Alexandria, Virginia. So if you are watching this live, or even if you just want to mention it afterwards, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating. And let's go ahead and start. Let's go ahead and start. All right, so we see Benny from Sweden. We have Uno Memento from Finland. And we have, I think it's Kare from Norway. So it sounds like we already have our Scandinavian presence here. We have Peter from Montreal. Great to see you. We have Dimitris from Greece. All right. And we have Chibabel from South Germany. All right. And we see Jazz Dude Agent K. All right, so you see, hello, Greg. I think Cubase Pro 12 spectrogram is not a faithful representation of what is going on with audio frequencies. Proof me if I'm wrong. All right, so let's see. When we go to, let's say, if I just wanted to play a test tone, so to, not sure which one that we're looking at, but let's say if I wanted to, I think I have just a test tone at 440 hertz. I'll take the volume down and let's go ahead and solo just this particular track. All right, so we see if we have this in a loop. So if we wanted to come over to audio, and go to the spectrum analyzer, we can see that at around 440 hertz that we see that frequency. show up right at 440 hertz, and then we see the overtone series. So it looks like that's pretty accurate to me. So let's say if I wanted to now run this through, let's say, our control room and go to inserts, if we wanted to look at supervision, and let's look at our spectrum bar. So once again, we're going to have our overtone series that we see here kind of represented. So it looks pretty accurate to me, but maybe if you could share why you feel it isn't accurate. But that looks like it's that's kind of doing what I would expect it to. So, but okay. All right, wonderful to see Michael Pierce from outside of London. All right, we have Jan from Stockholm. All right, and we have Arief from Holland. Thanks for joining us. And we have Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. And with Stefan from Sweden, we have Asbrown 444 from Bend, Oregon. Thanks for joining us. All right, Trond from Norway. Great to see you back. We have Razel from Denmark. All right. And we have Ricardo Raimundo from Germany/Brazil. All right. And we have Pearl Austin checking in from Hamburg. Miss going to Hamburg. Hope to be able to get back there for meetings and hang out with the staff at Steinberg. All right. Okay, so we have a question. I see. I'm confused by how to save a project in Cubase 12 to a C drive and then how to back it up from its current location to an external hard drive location. All right, so if we just wanted to, when we start a project, we'll come over here. Often you're prompted to, create a project location. So once we've done that, that's where all the audio files. So if I say create empty, we choose a file here. So we'll say, okay, I want to go to Hangouts, and let's say, okay, I want this to be January 17th, 2023. I'm so proud I haven't put 2022 for a 2023 date yet, but I'm sure I just jinxed myself. So now all of the files that we record, the audio files, will be saved there. Now, when we go to actually save a particular file, we'll see that it's going to automatically prompt us to put it into that folder. So if I just wanted to call this January 17th, 2023, now that project folder, that project file would be saved within that particular folder. So often what you want to do is to make sure that we are actually backing up the project folder and not the project, because we want those two to be linked, especially if you're doing a lot of audio, so you don't have to move. So, so at this point we could do a save as, and we could save that to your C drive or any drive the project folder. But again, it probably makes sense to have it associated at this hierarchical level. At this level within the file folders to our audio. Now, if we wanted to back up the whole project and everything, all the audio files to a new location, to an external drive, all that we would have to do is come over here and say File and go to Backup Project. It's going to ask us to create a new folder. And we can put this new folder on our external drive. We'll come over here, we'll say Open that folder. So here we could give our project name. It'll automatically adapt it. It'll automatically extract it from the project. We could keep the current project active. We could choose to minimize audio files. We could choose not to back up the mixdown folder or video. We could minimize audio files. And then when we hit OK, then that would back it up to an external drive location. So let me know if that makes sense. Okay. All right, so we see Tata Digital Studio also checking in from Finland. All right, so we have a question from Peter. I recently watched your how to work with the transport stop behavior in Cubase YouTube channel. Can I hit any of the available stop keys and have both playhead and screen image go to project start? So let's say if we're coming over here, let's say we're in the middle of this project. So if I hit the period key, so let me activate this project. So let's say we're at measure 61, and let's say we're playing. So if I hit the period key on the numeric keypad, that will take you straight to the beginning of the project. So if you wanted to, at any point, whether your project, is, let's say we're zoomed out here. So hit, if you're stopped, all you have to do is hit the period key on the numeric keypad, and that will immediately take you to the beginning of the project. So if we're here, so let me know if that would work for you. So you may have to, and that could be independent. So if the project is playing, so let's say we're playing the project. So just hitting the period key will take you back there. So if you, let's say we're here in the project, so if I hit stop, so if I hit stop once and then just hit the period key. So, and even if you go to the numeric keypad, if you hit 0, that's going to be stop. The enter key is play, and the period key between them is going to be the return to start of the project. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Peter. All right, so we have Thomas checking in from Napoli, Italy. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question. Will we see Cubase 12.5 or Cubase 13 this year? So generally, I can't speak about future releases until it's, I would say it's probably within the scope to think that there would be a new version this year, since, Cubase has only been out for about 9 or 10 months currently. So, but I can't really confirm anything more than that. But we usually don't announce stuff beforehand, before it's released. All right, so we see Vali checking in from Austria, Vienna. All right, and Val's looking forward to learning a lot of stuff today. And we have Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. And PZ136 from the UK checking in. All right. So let's say we have a question from Michael Pierce. I have a band recorded all in one project. I time detect the drums. Sorry, just email copying. I time detect the drums instead of fixed BPM. Can I then make all the other tracks follow? Example, vocals, that new tempo map, and stay in time with my drums. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, so let's say we have a multi-track. So often if you've done if it was recorded together, once you've done a tempo detection, it should automatically kind of follow. So let's say if so here I'm going to take, so I have no tempo map with this multi-track project. So I want to take just my overheads and let's do a tempo detection on that. So we'll say let's get to overheads. Okay, so it seems fine. So I want to, now that we've done this, we can say, and we want to basically just find the downbeat. Okay, so we have kind of everything kind of broken down. So we're going to say this is where the downbeat is, our 4/4 time. So now that we have kind of the tempo map extracted from the events, if we want all of the events to kind of just match up to that, what we could do is just select all of our events on the project window, all of our audio events, get advanced, and then we'll say set definition from tempo. So now we'll just say, okay, we're going to save definition. We can save it into the audio files as metadata or just directly into the project. I'll save it into the project for now. And what this is doing is basically, instead of a static tempo value, it's dragging in all of the tempo changes that we see in this list here, and it's embedding into all the positions of the particular audio files. So now that this is done, we can say our tempo is roughly 138 to 142. So I'm going to say I just want this to be a fixed tempo of 140. So now any other audio files that has tempo information, we could just come over, and if I wanted to just drag in any audio file, so say I'm just going to drag this in, and we'll drop this onto a downbeat here, say starting at measure 81. So we'll have this snap directly to the grid, and we're going to have this automatically be put into musical mode. So once that's in musical mode, I can now just take any other audio that was extracted and so now my loop is dynamically adjusting, and if I wanted to come here and have the original tempo, my loop is still automatically fitting in with the tempo. So the key the key that you often want to do is just selecting the particular event and going to audio to advanced, and then you want to set definition from tempo onto those particular events, and then you could have any other files follow, have those files follow different tempos, whatever you want. So even if I wanted to take this and take my tempo information and just drop all of my tempos. So now we'll just have it start to get much slower. And then even if I want to take this and gradually speed it up, so now that Cubase knows what the tempo is of a loop or what the tempo changes are in a particular file through the set definition from tempo, then you could have anything kind of follow any tempo change that you want. So let me know if that's helpful, Michael. All right, wonderful to have Cedric back. Great to see you on the live stream. All right, so we have a question from Chris Johansson. Hi, Greg. I have a drum MIDI track set to multi-out. What is the best way to convert all the MIDI tracks, all the multi-tracks to audio within the project? Ideally, I want them to have the same duration. Okay, so let's say And if we have this as an instrument track, we could do this very easily. So what I'm going to do is just come over here and I'll create. Okay, let me just open up and drag a part in. Okay, so let's say now I have this event in, and I'm doing this from an instrument track. So when I go to the instrument, I say, okay, I want this going out of output 2, this going out of output 2, and let's say my snare and clap going out of output 3. And let's say a hi-hat out of output 4. So I'll go ahead and just, and let's say this hi-hat out of output 4. So now we could have, see our multi-tracks going directly here. So what I'm going to do now is, let's say I have like multiple, and if we click on like the little arrow key here, we can see all of our outputs. So we'll have kind of our master out, our kick, clap, hi-hat broken down. So to kind of get these as individual files is just simply select the event, and let's go to edit, to render in place. Let's go to render settings. I think we want to come over here and select channel settings. So now I'll just come over here, and now we can see my kick, hi-hat, and all of my different elements rendered as different files. So if we come directly over here, let's just put this into. So at this point, so whatever outputs, once those outputs are defined, and if it's going to be a, like instead of a beat agent kit, if you needed to define the outputs in an acoustic agent kit, it's handled slightly differently. So you would do it from the mixer. So let's say if we come over here to the mixer, and then for like my kick, we would choose our outputs there. So once the outputs are routed, all you have to do then is select the event, go to edit, to render in place. And I think if you do dry, it may not carry over, but try channel settings, and that works. And then each of the tracks will be rendered out for you very fast. Let me know if that's helpful. All right, wonderful to see Alexander Plasko. All right, so we see from Ariana, who asked about saving the projects, is just it says, thank you, my screen doesn't look like that though. So if you could let us know which version that you're on. Okay, so and again, all you'd have to do is just come over here, File, to Backup Project, and make sure that you create a unique folder with that. But also, Ariana, if you want to just let us know exactly which version you're on, but that should, and I think at some point this had changed from Backup Project from a different term. But if you could let us know which version you're running, but it's basically been the same for a number of versions. All right, so we have ES Pro Cancius from the UK. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see question, Greg, why are my logical editor presets grayed out? They worked well until a month ago. Cubase Pro 11, Mac OS Catalina. Thank you in advance. Sometimes we will see the particular functions maybe grayed out. If, let's say, I have a MIDI part selected and this is the active window, and we come over to, let's say we go to our project logical editor. So, sometimes different elements may be grayed out if there is like nothing like that will actually kind of be applicable for that function. Like sometimes the MIDI logical editor functions don't actually do anything if a MIDI part isn't selected. So it could be something like that. So make sure that what you have focused on the particular window is actually something that could be the project logical editor can be applied to. So let me just think my Cubase is, I'll just do a quick force quit here. Hang on. So usually, if I don't have a MIDI part, the MIDI logical editor presets. So it could be like maybe you have the mix console as the active window. So let me just come over here real quick. So let's say the mixer is open, and then when we go to our project logical editor, that some settings may be grayed out depending on what the active window is. So check to make sure that you actually have like part of the window of focus could be affected by the logical editor. All right, so we see question, how to play a MIDI instrument melody which follows the chords in the chord track I made above. Okay, so let's say I have a chord track. Okay, so now let's say if I have Rhodes. One of the things you could do is if you go to the chord track here, you could do live input. And here we could choose only on the chords. So now if I wanted to play, this would automatically. So I'm hitting a C and a C sharp, but the C sharp isn't in key. So now when I play a melody, it will just do a live transform. So let's say I will come over here. So now even though I hit notes that were, that were out of key or out of chord, now it's only going to show notes that are actually physically within the chord. So we could just come over to our live input on this particular track. So we go to our chord track, and there's also within the editor, if you have the editor selected and we go to the scale assistant, here we could just say, we could do snap live input, and then we could have this based on the chord track or on the editor scale. So that could allow you to still be in key, but not play notes that are out of key. So you could do that, and this could also be as soon as we want to do snap pitch editing. So if I have this off, I could say, okay, I want this note to go to a C sharp, but if I go to snap pitch editing, now I could only this note will only move to notes that are within the particular scale. So, but probably the fastest way is just to come over here on the MIDI track and select the chord track go to the chord track on this, and you'll see live input, and then you could extract it to chords, scales, or chords and scales. So let me know if that's helpful. All right. Okay, so you see Michael Pierce just says, Cubase Magic, I didn't think through it all. Just an idea came to me earlier today at work. That's amazing and suitably easy too. Thank you, Greg. So yeah. All right, so we see from Quellen, hey Greg, will Steinberg release a Cubase 12.5 version, or will they go straight to Cubase 13? Hope you're able to talk about this matter. So what they've done, and I think they've announced publicly, is they're not going to be doing 0.5 versions. What was coming out in a 0.5 version was in essence, like the equivalent of 3 versions of other programs. So it seemed a bit diminutive for the particular release. So I think that we'll just go from, we went from Cubase 11 to 12, and I think that pattern will continue. So if I was to speculate, I would say that there probably wouldn't be a 12.5, just like we didn't have an 11.5, that we're going to go from 11 to 12 and probably 12 to 13, but that's merely speculation on my end. But either way, you'll get a bunch of great new features at a great value. All right, so John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin wants people to please hit the like button so we can keep the live stream going and keep it alive. All right, and we're glad that Cedric is back to be on the live session, so. All right, so a question from Benny. I'm having a bit of a trouble getting the bass to come out really in the sound picture with drums and guitar. Any nice tips how I can solve it? Heavy, hard, rock, Cubase 12. All right. So let's come over here. So, one of the things that, can make a bass kind of stand out, a lot of people say mid-range, but also a lot of people just miss kind of adding high-end EQ to make it kind of stand out. It's kind of a famous story, probably the first bass player that actually played with a lot of high-end content, high-end frequencies was John Entwistle, because I think it was the manager says, oh, you play so great in the concerts, but I can't hear you in the concerts. And, it was just kind of not cutting through. So let's say I'll take kind of a harder rock project here. Let's take a look at it. All right, so say all right, so we'll take our bass part here. So let's say now we listen to this. We got one night. We're gonna get it right. We're gonna crank it up and maybe start a fight. And if we bypass the EQ here. Now time is running out. But I'll be back again. Until the next time. It's not the end. So let's go ahead and just solo. So here we're kind of out of the frequency spectrum. So that's with the EQ bypassed. So, it may seem a little contrary, and also if you have new bass strings that are brighter, that's always helpful. But try adding some high end into the bass, and then it'll probably cut through the mix a little better. Some mid range and upper instead of just kind of low end. People naturally gravitate to doing low end on the bass, but I like to think of the bass as having the right amount of bass frequencies, mid frequencies, and high frequencies, just like a hi-hat or a kick drum. It's a balance of all of the frequencies that make it kind of sound better. All right, so we have Alexander Schuker checking in from Germany. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the live stream. All right, and we see Michael Teams has snuck on and is giving away virtual ice cream already to John Costigan. All right, so we see Ariana about the question saying that she has Cubase, or that they have Cubase 12 Pro. So, check, if you have file to backup project, let me know if you don't have that. But that's a pretty standard thing. So I think every version should have that. So let me know if that's the function that you're not seeing. All right, so we have a question. When emptying trash in the audio pool, does it only delete the audio folder in the project? Would it ever delete the original file location on a PC or Mac? So I think, and I'll just do a quick test with this. I'll do a new project. Okay, so let's add an audio track. So I think if we delete it, it goes into the trash can, and then if you delete it again, then it gets thrown away. So we'll just call this audio file delete test. Okay, so we'll go ahead and record. Okay, so let's say if we go to the pool window, and I'll go ahead and let's just open up our Finder window, not Safari, sorry. My classic learned mistake. All right, so we'll come over here to Documents, Projects. Okay, so now we come into this file here, we see our delete test. All right, so now I'm going to move to trash. So let's say if I come here, I'll just delete it in the project. All right, so now we look at it and we see that it's in the trash folder. And now we will come over and empty trash. It says you want to erase the file from the hard disk or only remove the clips from the pool. So now if we say erase, at that point we go to our Finder window. We can see that the original file was automatically deleted there. So just as soon as it's in the trash, so you could erase the file, go to the pool. So once that's been erased here, and now at this point, just come over empty trash, and you'll have where you could keep it on the hard drive and just remove it from the pool or erase it from the hard disk altogether. Okay, Michael Teams is on a tear for ice cream distribution. I just got an email from composer Paul Hasslinger. I'll have to give him a call after the live stream. All right, so a question from Mike Rivera. So the first question is, how do I raise multiple faders at once? Okay, so if we have a number of tracks, so let's just add a number of audio tracks here. So really all you have to do is if you see these three little dots here, that could open up kind of some extended views at the top. So I'm going to click in the field where the meter is on the mix console, and then I could just go to Q-Link, and then at that point you could raise whatever tracks are selected. We could raise the fader all at once, and if we wanted to override that, you could just hold down Alt or Option, and now we could just move them all proportionally as you see fit. So Alt or Option, we could change and temporarily override the Q-Link, and now we could just raise all the faders just like that. And Mike's second question, how do I reset all Cubase settings to factory default? Thank you very much. So I'll just start up Nuendo, but if you hold down Alt Control Shift or Command Option Shift right after the program starts, so let's say I'll do Nuendo, and then right after starting the application, hold down those keys, and then you could just say, and this will take you into safe mode, and then at this point you could just say delete program preferences, and that will take you back to like a brand new factory restart. So just again, Alt Control Shift or Command Option Shift. So if you're on Windows or Mac OS, that you could just simply do that, and then you should be all set, and that will take you back to your original factory settings. Okay. All right. So we see from Alex Morgan, question, needs some MediaBay help. MediaBay seems to be rescanning, or rather forgetting previously scanned files and folders every time I reopen Cubase. Any advice in settings? One thing that could cause it could be a preference. So let's say if we go to preferences, and we'll come over here, and then under MediaBay, and you could just uncheck scan folders only when MediaBay is open. So check that directly there and see if that is checked, because that could cause it to kind of rescan, like kind of almost, like, oh, we only got 100 files scanned when it was opened, and every time you open it, it may just kind of be rescanning. So check to see if that preference is disabled. Okay. All right, so we have Knight Rohan that's on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. All right, so we see Jean-Marie Horvat on. Says he's a little late because some people are working. So I know the feeling. But we're glad to have you on, Jean-Marie. All right, so we have Bruce Bruton from Simi Valley, if I remember right. All right, and he's present and he hit the like button. All right, so we see Michael Teams may have his computer situation resolved. And looks like maybe it was a RAM issue. That's always fun to track down. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters on. Okay, all right, so we see from Ariana, just says, I do have that. What I don't see is create file. So if you're backing up, I'll just do a small project here. All right, so we'll come over here. We'll say backup project. All right, so I'm just going to put this onto my desktop. And again, define the new folder. Okay, so now that we have the folder defined, we hit open. Now this is the project name. So I'll just call this backup. You don't have to. Now I'll hit OK. It's basically copying all those files. So now when we go to our desktop, we'll come over here. So we'll see our bicycle backup delete. That's what we just created. And here is our folder, and all of our audio files are right there. So it doesn't necessarily, just when you get to that one stage, and we go to the backup project, that now you just type in the project name there, and that will create the project file for you for the backup. So let me know if that's in your system, Ariana. All right. So we have from Esteban Carlos Benson. His question is, can you tell us more about the profile feature? When you save a profile, is it supposed to contain the color preferences? It will contain your preferences, but not the actual color scheme that you want here. That's actually stored within the particular project. So what the profile manager will allow you to do is going to save like your key commands, user presets, global workspaces, all of your user created track presets, all of those user created presets. Those will all be saved. But the colors are actually migrated over directly through a particular project. So that's not carried over. So, if you wanted to, so when you start, if you wanted a particular color scheme across all your projects, you could start off with a template, or you could come over here to your color setup. So if we go to the project color setup, we could come over here, and then there's options to, once you have color setups, you could save this to the default factory settings. And at that point, you could just have those be the default colors for different projects, but the colors aren't transferred over within the profile manager. That's kind of at the, that's a component of the project itself. All right. All right, so we see from Doug O, I'm still unable to use Spectral Layers 9 as an extension in Cubase 12 Pro. Is there anything to check? Generally, I mean, so make sure, if you see, let me know if you don't see in the extension area, if you don't see Spectral Layers listed there. I think some people may have, had to, and let me know if you're, I know some people may have reset preferences, holding down Alt Control Shift or Command Option Shift to see if that worked. But make sure, and also if you can let us know, Doug, if your particular Spectral Layers is running in standalone or just not available. If it's working in standalone and just not seeing it inside of Cubase 12, but generally it just always shows up there. All right, so we have from Jan or Jan Patrick. How do I get tracks all the same length so that tracks start from the first bar and stop at the same time? For example, I want to send them to someone else. So once we do this, we could just say, okay, let's say I had a number of tracks here. All right, and these were different length tracks. Okay, and I wanted to make equal length stems of all these. So what you want to do is to set the length of the left and right locators around the particular events. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go to Export. So we can see that all these tracks are different lengths. So we want to set the left and right locators for the beginning and the end of the project. We will come over now and say, let's go to Export Audio Mixdown, and we're going to choose Multiple. And at this point, we're going to say we're going to do it based on the locators. And we will come over here, and after export, we'll create a new project just to kind of show. So all these are different lengths. So the length is going to be determined by the left and right locators. So now we'll export. Sorry, I didn't have it checked. Okay, so let's export audio mixdown. I'm going to select all of my audio channels, and we'll say export. And we could choose to include, our whatever functions processing that we want. And now we can see that even though where there was no data before, it's just created silence and exported everything directly into a new project with equal length audio files. So let me know if that's helpful. So we see question, how do you simultaneously adjust the track delay, the offset found in the top of the inspector on multiple MIDI tracks? Okay. So I'm not sure. Let's go ahead and just add. Come over here. I'll just create a number. So I don't think it's going to actually. So if you wanted to adjust. Okay, so I think that this is going to be set for a track by track basis, but let's say if I come, let's say if I have like a MIDI part here, let me just throw in a quick note. One other way that you could do it is, let's say we're going to just have a note start at measure 4. So let's say, we'll look at this. Okay, and let's say if we copied this particular note, so I think that we could, that's not doing it from the track inspector here, but if we wanted to take all of the MIDI notes that were in a particular event, I think if we go to the MIDI logical editor, that we could come over here and say, okay, we want to transform, we want to take notes, and we'll adjust their position, and let's say I want to subtract, and then we could do milliseconds. So let's say I want to subtract, 100 milliseconds. So basically we want to adjust the position of these notes 100 milliseconds earlier. So instead of doing it, if it's for playback, you could adjust it all. That may not make sense if you're doing editing and you want it to, be exactly on the time. But if you needed to shift multiple tracks, but I think that, that if we wanted to do this across multiple tracks, that the track delay, and let me just see, I don't think it's addressable through like a MIDI remote. Yeah, so I think that each track would have to be done manually, but you could shift all of the MIDI data over using a logical editor. But I can see that if you wanted to keep that at the bar position and be able to adjust, that may not work for you. So I don't know a way of doing that. Sorry about that. All right. Okay, so we have a question. How can we raise the faders, all of the faders, overriding volume automation on specific tracks? Okay, and it's just kind of like what we did here. So let's say I'll just revert. All right, make sure. All right, so let's say if I'm playing this, and I'll just do some quick automation. On this, let's say we have our Q link, and I'm just going to automate. So we have automation there. So if I wanted to now take all of the tracks and be able to automate as soon as we see our automation is coming in where we had automated. Now when I stop, it just goes right back to where our existing automation was. So again, you could just select all the tracks and enable Q-Link for that. So let me know if that makes sense. So, and that will overwrite the automation, the previously existing automation. All right, so we see, can you think of a way to make a key command for open all the plugins on a selected track? Control Shift plus taking cursor and selecting E on a macro logical editor. I can't find a way to do it, so I think I've tried before and I was unsuccessful, but we'll give it a shot again. All right, so if we have particular projects here, I could say, for those that don't know the feature, so I think it's Control Shift and or Command Shift, and then come over here. That, or it's just Alt Option Shift and then clicking on the E. All right, so, and that would open up all the particular plugins. And let me see if there's, oh, man. See if we go to maybe Project Logical Editor. Yeah, so we can bypass from here. Yeah, so I don't know of a way to carry that over into, directly into a key command. But if you want to send me an email, I'll play around with it and see if there's some way. So once we have this selected, to navigate down to the next slot. And let me just see if there's. And let me just. This may be the macro that I was. Yeah. I'll see if I can play with it, and maybe if you want to send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'll see if I could come up with some macro to be able to try to duplicate that in a way that's kind of practical. Sorry about that. But be happy you could open all the plugins with that one function, even if you have to use your mouse. So. All right, so we see a question, how to do any edit on an offline. So let's say if we have an offline process here, okay, so I'm going to select an event, and let's say I just want to select maybe a region, a portion of the event. So if we go to audio and go to processes, and I can say, okay, we're going to do a fade in. So, and let's say at this point, if we go to, we could also just go to our direct offline processor or hit F7, which will open up kind of the same window. So if we wanted to, do a flanger or something like this. So let's say, okay, now I just want to do flanger on that particular take, and I wanted to take this and let's say, okay, I want to adjust the gain up 16 dB. So now if I come over here and select the event, I could adjust the parameters for the offline edit. So if I say, okay, I want the flanger to be half notes instead, that we could select each independent element. And if I say, okay, I liked everything except for the flanger, I could delete that independently, or I could choose to delete all of the offline processes. So let me know if that's what you were thinking for. All right, so we see Sable Winter says she has a wonderful surprise for the next Zoom. So such a tease. So we look forward to seeing whatever Sable is notorious for having the coolest gadgets on our Zoom social meetups that we do on the last live stream of the month. So we're looking forward to it, Sable. Hope you're dealing with all the weather that's going on in Northern California okay. Okay, so we see from Ariana, creating the project in the first place before backing it up doesn't allow me to create a new project file. Okay, so let's say if we, again, create, so I'm going to do new project, and here I have it, I think the default behavior is prompt for the project location, so I'm going to create empty. I'm going to choose a folder, so we'll say, come over here, Ariana. Okay, so this is my project folder. So now, once the project folder is created, we can, so we may not be able to, if you don't have, let's say, okay, I'll just go drag over some different elements. Okay, so let's see if we can do a backup project here. Now we haven't saved the project. So say new folder. Okay, so we're going to select that particular folder. Let's give it a name. All right. And then all of my audio files. But, it's always good to make sure that, like, when you have this, because you could start a project, but, Cubase doesn't necessarily create a project file for you. So you may just have to click here. So this project doesn't, we look at it, I think it'll just show, when we come over, we could just say, so if we start, make sure that you actually, save the project and give it a name. as well. So but let me know if that's helpful. And then, if you're creating a new project, just choose new project from the start menu or from the file menu directly there. All right, so we see kind of a follow-up from Peter's question about if we're playing and hit stop. So yeah, I think it's normal behavior because what you want to do is to, like, as you, you want, if you stop first and then hit play. So let's say as we're playing this, so if I hit stop and then period, then it'll take you to the particular, to the beginning of the project stopped. So we just go, like if you do it quickly and the keys are right next to each other. So as you're doing it, stop, then go to beginning of project. So I think there's two independent functions that you could use together. And if you wanted to create a macro to chain them together, you could do that as well. All right, so we see from Westar, hi Greg, is it correct that there are no MIDI sends on an instrument track? Any workarounds to make one instrument track feed another instrument with its notes? So it's really easy just to, because we think of an instrument track is going to be kind of, that particular instrument. Like when you do an instrument, it's going to contain all of the audio characteristics of that particular of that instrument track. So let's say if we come back over here, so I think it's pretty, with a MIDI track, it's not necessarily implied what the audio destination is, but instrument tracks are. So let's say we have an electric piano. So let's say if I wanted to add another instrument, I could just come over. So let's say, okay, I'm going to add another Hallian Sonic SE. And I want this to be, let's say maybe a clavinet. Okay, so now what I could do is just come right over here. And I'm going to hold down Shift plus the Alt key. Okay, so now so at that point, so now I have two different instrument tracks because this instrument track goes directly and it ties directly to the audio output of the instrument. So when we come over here, I could just take this, and now if I wanted to go to visibility, I could come over here and say, okay, I'm just going to hide like this selected track. And because I held down the Alt plus the Shift key to make a shared copy, now any edit that I do in this particular instrument, and let's say, okay, I want to take these notes and I'll just make this larger so that we could see it expressed differently. So as I move selected notes here, that if I come directly over here, that all those edits have been applied to this because they are in fact linked together. So at that point we could just any edit made in one, but think of the instrument track, and if you wanted to play both of these sounds together, what you could do is just come over and put these into a folder. And now when I just say, okay, this is my clavinet, Rhodes, that I could just come over here and arm this particular folder. And both instruments will sound just from one particular folder. But again, when you do an instrument track, that's not only just sending it out to the device, but that's also handling, the audio outputs, the audio routing within the instrument. So that's why it's kind of that way. It's a very clear and clean relationship that track is going to this mixer. Because if there's no, so it just makes it much easier because the instrument track is kind of all inclusive of everything throughout the entire signal path. All right, we see Sable Winters is like number 44. Thanks for that. All right, so we have a question. What DAW is this? So this is Cubase Pro 12, so by Steinberg. And this is the Club Cubase live stream where we just sit here and answer questions and help people get the most out of their Cubase experience. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to render all audio tracks in a lane to one length so they all have the same start and end point? All right, so let's take a look. See if I have this project in my recent list. Guess not. All right, so let me just open this up. All right, so let's say if we have a number of different tracks that we see in lanes. So I think if you select it, let's see if we do a bounce selection from the audio menu, if that does a trick. All right, so probably what you could do in this particular case is select the lanes here, hold down the shift key, select the lanes, and then right click and say you want to create tracks from lanes. Come over, let's select this, and then if you wanted to just come right over here and do a bounce selection once that they're on their own lanes, then that should do it. So try taking the lanes, selecting them, and then right click in the track column, and then you want to basically create tracks from lanes, and then once they're in tracks, then you could bounce them. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Okay, so you see from Doug O about that he has it listed, registered, and runs in standalone, but it's not running. When this is the spectral layer is not running inside of Cubase. So if you want to email me, I could do some more research. Send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. Is there any way to set global tuning to 432 hertz in Cubase so that all VST instruments set to 432 hertz instead of standard 440 hertz? So there isn't a way to do it globally because a lot of instruments don't have the tuning capability to do that. So if we set it up, then some instruments are 8 cents higher than others. So it's not all instruments that have the ability to switch down to 8 cents. So that's why there's no global tuning, because it's, many instruments don't support that. Instruments like Hallian do, but many instruments don't. So there isn't a global for that particular reason. So that, that would assume that Cubase could make instruments do stuff that they're not designed to do. So, and that's kind of a bad path to go down. All right, wonderful to see Madge Deepers checking in from a really cold United Kingdom. So thanks for joining us today. We hope we'll warm you up with some free knowledge. So you see a question. Hi, Greg. Can you use the control room if you're using an Apollo AI? So you could use the control room with any audio interface. And some people, I get this question, why do I need to use the control room if, I'm just using like an audio interface with 2 outputs? So there's lots of reasons for that. One is, being able to utilize the listen bus. So let's say at this point, if we wanted to just open up this. So even, so I'm not sure if the Apollo AI is just limited to particular inputs and outputs, maybe like stereo in, stereo out. But let's say. So a lot of times people miss, we get solo tracks. But we also have this listen. And we can set the listen functionality right here in the bottom. So if I wanted to take, maybe the bass part, and we click on, I could dim the other tracks while the bass is. So now if I say, okay, I wanted to take this and say, okay, let's take just. We could just dim other tracks. There was no regret right after that Garth show. You told your daddy and he called my mom. So now all the other tracks are just dimmed down. And this also goes for reverb, like if we solo, I can hear everything that's being fed into that reverb, but if I wanted to isolate the reverb, so now I'm only hearing the reverb and not the original source tracks that are feeding it. We can also set like known reference points for volume. So if we wanted to dim, or if we wanted to go to our control room here, we could listen to this in different down mix presets. So I could listen to it in stereo or mono. So even if you have a 2-in, 2-out audio interface, there's still lots of great functionality of the control room that's applicable to that. All right, so we see a question. Hey, Greg, do you have any advice for rendering in place several MIDI tracks from a multi-timbral external synth connected to as an external instrument in Cubase? When I click render in place, nothing happens. So do you have them all connected to, let me know if you have them, all of the tracks are connected to the same instrument. So you say it's so it's running in multi-timbral mode. So I've done it many times with one single instrument. Obviously it has to do the render in place in real time. But if you do, I'm not sure if if you have different if you try one part at a time, if it makes a difference, or, because it may, so I'm not sure if you're doing, if you're rendering a part that's on MIDI channel 1 and you have on your external instrument parts that are on MIDI channel 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that it may not work. They may have to take each of those and just simply render them one at a time. So let me know if you're doing it, if it works when you just do one particular instrument, or if you have 8 outputs from your external instrument connected into 8 analog inputs of an audio interface. But let's say if I wanted to come here, let's add an instrument track. And let's say okay, I want to send it to my Tyros. Okay. And let's come over here. Let's add another instrument track and send it to Tyros. And even though it's using kind of the same data here, all right, and now let me see if I set these to different MIDI channels. So this is MIDI channel 1, this is MIDI channel 2. Yeah, so it looks like, you might be limited to, you might have to do it one at a time. So let's see if I just select this. And I may not have it configured for MIDI channel 2, but let's go ahead and. Yeah, so try rendering in place like that. So when I tried multiple ones to see what shows up in your particular instrument. But let's say if we go to, and also if you can let us know which external instrument that it's using as well. And you may, sometimes, depending on your audio interface, you may just have to kind of track it. Okay, we have a question. When duplicating a vocal track to use Very Audio to make it a harmony, how to bounce it so Very Audio only changes the duplicated track? Many thanks. All right, so let's say I want to take this lead vocal, and then I'm going to duplicate this particular track. All right, so what happens a lot of times when we duplicate a track, what's going to happen is as we duplicate a track, it's playing back the same audio file. So what you have to do is just come select this, and we're going to turn it into a new audio file by going to Audio to Bounce Selection, and we'll choose to replace events. So as we come here, with you, just like long. So now when I do like a Very Audio edit, let me just close this out real quick. The original one will not be affected because these are two different files. With you, just like a long, long time ago. So now, and this will probably be awful. In love with you, just like a long, long time ago. So you could hear that is not affecting the original. So we could just, again. So make sure that you actually, after you duplicate it, select
That was a long, long time ago. Come through, it caught my breath while waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home. You looked my way and your heart shone through.
So that way, so just come over here, go to audio, and again to bounce selection and choose to replace. And then it's a separate newly created file so that when you do an edit on this audio file, it's not going to be applied to both. So that's not being the edit isn't being applied to the audio file, but to, that way it's a separate audio file and each event will have its own one. So. All right, so we have Gerald Ely, finally from a sunny California. So it's great. I hope we got through all the atmospheric rivers. Okay. Okay, so I see from Giovanni, how can I realize the track? So let me, I'm not sure if it's resizing the track. So if it's resizing, we could just grab it by the bottom of the track and set the height. But maybe if you could ask the question in a different way. I'll try to help you out, but I'm not sure how to realize the track, what you mean by that. All right. So we see a question. Is it possible in a sampler control to make your own slices? All right. So let's come over here. All right. So I will come over here. Let's create a sampler track from that. So when we go to slices, all right, so we'll activate this. So I think if you just hold down, let's say if we wanted to. All right, so we'll put the mode here to manual. And then if you just hold down the Alt or Option key, you could then kind of create your slice points right there. So once it's in the sampler track, set these, activate and slice. So we turn slice on, and then there's a little on button, set the mode to manual, and then hold down the Alt or Option key, and then you could just drag and drop and put your slices in just like that. All right, so we see from Giovanni, sorry, how can I realize track wrap? So I'm not sure if I still understand the question. I'm not sure if you want to do like a rap track or what you want to do. But, you could start with like a drum beat and then, record your vocal. But, maybe if you could clarify a little bit for me. Sorry for my ignorance. All right, wonderful to see Patrick on the live stream today. Right, great to see Tommy Valenko and Jay Hatchie and Soren from Sweden. All right, and we have Rouge Green checking in from Lowe's in the south of the UK. Thanks for joining us. All right. So this is question. When I want to export multi files, it says the naming scheme is not okay. I tried to change the naming scheme, but still doesn't work for me. All right. Okay. So let's say if we come over here and we go to export to audio mixdown, one is make sure that if you just kind of put So the naming scheme, if you come over here, try just to, put just the name in and see if that allows you to export. That's like the simplest way, and that will allow you to say, okay, I want to take, my audio channels here when we choose multiple, and that will just come over here and just take just kind of the name of the, so let us know exactly what's in, like if we don't want the channel number, simplify this, the best way. So if you just want to come over here and say, okay, I just want the name, and we could choose this for default. Hang on, sorry, turn my phone off. So maybe if you could let us know exactly what you have in your naming scheme, but if you, maybe just utilize the name and see if that's carried over. And you could not have anything in the naming scheme, and it would just take over the name directly from the track as well. All right, so a question from Patrick. How to select MIDI notes based on timing in MIDI logical editor, like note switches on third beat or fifth beat. Likewise, how to select notes, is it possible? Okay, so let's say, okay, so I'll just put a long note in here. All right, and now I'm going to kind of split it up. Okay. So let's say I only want to select notes that are on, let's say, the third beat. Here, I'll just do a different approach here. Okay, so let's say we have our notes, and we only want to select the notes on the third beat using the MIDI logical editor. So at this point, we'll go to MIDI, and let's get to our logical editor. So we want to select as our function, and we're going to say MIDI notes, and then we're going to choose position. And then we could say inside bar range. And then you could actually just kind of draw around beat 3. So you can say, okay, this is one measure in 4/4 time. So now when I come over here and I'll hit apply, that will select the notes that are on beat 3 or around beat 3. And you could also just kind of come right over here and say, okay, I want to take this to 03.0. 0.0, and then we can say, okay, through 04. So if you want to be like really precise, we could just say, okay, now I just want to select notes just on beat 3. So, and then if I wanted this, so you could do stuff like that. So let me know if that's helpful, Patrick. So that way you could, and if you're in 5/4, you could kind of do the same concept there. All right, so we had the Tooster checking in from Germany. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. I have an issue with Cubase 12 Pro. Sometimes crashed or hanged, and sometimes it works, but not stable. The editing area does not affect maximize or minimize. I do not know what's wrong. So, let me know if you're using third-party plugins. That's often kind of culprit with crashing. And I see the editing area does not affect. So when you say the editing area, I'm not sure if it's like the project window here. If, we choose to minimize or maximize particular projects, we can see that is, we can see that that's now minimized if we wanted to bring it back, but we could also just take this editing area and resize it as well if you wanted to. But, let me know if you try it without any third-party plugins, if you still have, issues with it. And if you're on Windows, check out also, there's a utility called Resplendence, has a utility called Latency Mon, and that could point out if there's any like hardware problems with like your display driver that's causing interruptions on like within your audio performance systems. All right. Okay, so we see, why can't I drop my song on SoundCloud? So I'm not sure if you export it directly from Cubase to SoundCloud using this, or, if you're just taking your particular project. So let's say we export audio mix down, and then for the after export, you could choose to upload to SoundCloud. So I'm not sure if you're utilizing that or if you're just taking particular files. But it could also be, make sure that the audio file formats will match for SoundCloud as well. So if they have any like limitations with sample rate or bit depth, stuff like that, that could be a factor. All right, wonderful to see Nick on the live stream. My chat field just jumped. Sorry. All right. Okay, so we see from Patrick question, Greg, sometimes when I try to select notes inside the bar range in the MLE, it's not selecting correctly. What may be the cause if I select the bar end in MLE notes on bar 1 selected? Can you try? So like as we looked at here, when we're doing inside the bar range, this is, so let's say we have a number of bars here. And let's go to our MIDI logical editor. So again, I just made sure, and here we chose that, notes on beat 3. And let me just, so, if I move this to beat 2, and then hit apply, that's selecting kind of the second note within the measure. So, it seems to be working as expected here. But, try just grabbing visually and then, whatever you want to do, just like that. So you can grab around the beat. So if I want it only around beat 1, we could do stuff like that, or around beat 3. So, it seems to be working as expected. So it says if I select the bar end in the MIDI logical editor, notes on bar 1 selected. So this isn't, this is one measure. So this is going to be, When we do inside bar range, it's for one bar. So it's not globally, for select the first note of the event. So it's going to be for every note within that particular measure. So that's what the inside bar range is. It's not inside of the event, but inside the bar range. Right. All right, wonderful to see Daniela Tocan on. Glad you could join us. All right, so we see this follow up says, keep saying the operation couldn't be completed, and this is with the SoundCloud. So I'll look into it. I know that there was some issues. I thought it may have gotten resolved with some SoundCloud but let me know if you're utilizing the export, the post process export function. Cash Kid 4X. All right, so we have a question. Does Alt plus Shift drag links MIDI files on different channels also work on audio? I'm fairly sure I've never seen that work, but intrigued. So it works. It's slightly different. So let's say if I wanted to do it on, add an audio track here, I would need to actually do it from a part. So if I come, let's say I wanted to take this, and I'm going to go to the audio menu and say events to part. So now I'm going to hold down the Alt, and so now that I've edited this particular part, so we see that we have the X. So it's not an event, but we transform it into a part. So now if I come over and I was doing like multiple edits within the part editor, that this could automatically, so if I was doing multiple background vocals, I could just kind of do changes here. Let's do a fade in, a fade out. And then we could see kind of all of these particular changes applied to one part be carried over to other parts. But you have to turn it into a part, and then the edits you do within a part can automatically be carried over to other audio events, but not generally events. So again, and then if you want to take that into, if you wanted to go back to an event, you could just say go to audio. And then there's if you have it selected, that would help. And then we could say dissolve part, and that would automatically then turn it back into event. So if you had some tracks that were just doubled and panned hard left and right, and you had a lot of editing to do, it can make a lot of sense to do it like that. All right. Right. So we have a question. Signal flow. When in a chain applies changing volume, mouse drag, square an audio event versus pre-gain. Had the feeling plus 5 dB pre-gain feeds way more into the plugins than 5 dB on the audio event. So it's really, both of the, so we could look at, when we look at like the pre-gain here, so we could add gain within the EQ on the pre-section, or we could add gain here on the particular events, and it's going to be before it hits the fader, before it hits the insert. So the effect will be the same if you do, if you add 5 dB gain here or 5 dB gain there, the end result for the gain structure would be identical. All right, so we see Nick is enjoying his Christmas prize of his Absolute 5. So we're glad you're enjoying all your new toys. You have to go through and try every one of the 7,619 presets. So have fun with it, and congratulations on your prize from before Christmas. All right, so a question from Patrick. Greg, what do you think is the most important skill a composer or songwriter should have, asking in terms of both philosophically and musically? I think one of the things you could do as a songwriter, a musician, is to kind of convey emotion and passion. And you could do that through your work, how you represent your work, how you sell your work, how you interact with people, how you work with other musicians. And I think, that is a really important skill to have. A lot of people, I remember talking with composer Alan Silvestri, and he was just like, everything is the mock-up. It was like everything I do is every piece of work that we get, everything is all based on the mock-up. So if you can make the best sounding mock-up, you're going to be so far ahead. And I think that's why Hans Zimmer had done really well initially, because, when everyone else was doing kind of piano reductions to play for the director, he was the guy who says, I'm going to try to make the world's greatest MIDI orchestra, so that when the director or composer comes in, that they could have that emotional experience and not try to imagine what an orchestra is going to sound like from a piano part. So again, being able to convey, passion and emotion and make an emotional connection, I think is a really strong skill to have. Obviously, if you compose great music on top of that, it's helpful. If you compose something really bad but still have compassion and emotion, but I think that's something that's easily overlooked. All right, so we see, hey Greg, can you share your logical editor presets and macros? So I think that they are up on the Cubase Nation Discord. Maybe Jazz Dude could confirm. But if you want to email me, I'm happy, and I think I just saw an email come in. But if you email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'm happy to share all the ones that I've created with anyone. So. Yes, I see from Got Yours, as I figured out about the Control Alt or the Alt Shift E to open up all the plugins, but technically it doesn't work right. In Key Commands Windows, it show hide all plugins, but you have to have the plugins open manually before it to work. So yeah, so I know that you can close it. You could close all of the plugin windows from. So if I'm here and I had a number of plugin windows open, that once they are open, that you could go to the Windows menu to close all the MIDI plugins or close all the plugin windows, but I don't think that there's an open all plugin windows. So I know that once they are open, that they could be closed with a key command, but not necessarily opened. But send me an email if you haven't, and I'll play around with it some more over and see if I can come up with something clever for Friday's live stream. All right, so see from Daniela about convolution reverb. I have problems because of 2,000 channels in the project. I use Vienna Ensemble Pro to separate Spitfire, Sonokinetic, and Sonoscore, and other libraries. The Cubase and Nuendo cannot share and communicate. Special with convolution is very soon end of line. So I'm not sure if the included Cubase plugins are kind of fixed to be running inside of Cubase. So let's say if we add an effects channel track. So let's say if we add our reverence, that this is going to be, tied directly to Cubase, and it may not be able to be hosted inside of something like VE Pro. So maybe you could just run the reverb directly inside of Cubase and do the processing there. So I'm not a VE Pro user, but I'm sure that you'd be able to do that and run the instruments and then still process them through the convolution reverb inside of Cubase. All right, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. And Alexander Plasko says, I think the thumbs up button is broken. So if you learned something new, make sure that you actually do that. And you see Jazz Dude is just, the reverence needs to work in send mode. So yeah, just come over here and add an effects channel track, and then you should be able to access anything that's coming into Cubase that way. All right, so I see from Michael Teams, thanks for the bass line on Blue Tropic Winds. Hope you liked the song. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I hope the bass line was okay. If you had any other ideas, just let me know. You can send me an email. All right. So we have a question from Daniela. Any workflow to bring Nuendo and Cubase working together? Bouncing is not ideal when you work with so much channels. So I'm not sure why you need to run. Excuse me. Let me just clear my throat. So, usually Cubase and Nuendo aren't necessarily run together. That you could just simply do your project within one particular program. You see Jazz Dude just saying, so I just separate them into different timelines in DaVinci for mix and mastering. So, I'm not sure if you, Daniela, have done just simply doing a batch export and all of your, if we have like an orchestral piece, that we could take all of the orchestral elements onto their own tracks. So if you just come over. So say when you do our export audio mix down, and I know this doesn't have this is a lot of MIDI tracks, but you could just choose to do multiple and then have all of the tracks rendered for you. So I'm not sure why you need to run two different, why you need to run Cubase and Nuendo at the same time, or what integration you want to see between them. All right. So we see, hey, Greg, I'm using a Roland Integra 7 with 16 MIDI tracks, each controlling a separate MIDI channel connected to two inputs of my interface for stereo. I can only render in place on a single instrument track. So I think that's by design because it's looking for other inputs for the other audio, for the other MIDI tracks itself. So you might have to, and if you're only doing two at once, you may be better off, since Cubase wants to see separate, distinct inputs for external instruments. You may be better off, just patching the analog, hitting play and patching the analog outs of your particular devices and recording it as audio. If you want them all separated, you'd have to do that one at a time, and it's just a limitation of external MIDI instruments that you don't run into with VST instruments. So, but if you had multiple outputs and multiple inputs configured, then I don't think you would have a problem. All right, so we have a question from Patrick. Is it possible to select multiple tracks and change multiple tracks' color with a single click? Is there a way? So if I wanted to just select multiple tracks and change the color, I go to the color tool, select my color, and they're all just changed like so. So again, select the tracks, activate the color tool, and change away. All right, so we see from Daniela, but inbuilt convolution in Cubase needs lots of resources and needs to be on a separate PC. So, we have people doing huge projects all with the built-in convolution reverb on Cubase. So I don't think, you should be fine running it, not on a separate PC. So unless your PC is like super old. Yeah, I see Jazz Dudes recommending the Junkie XL Tom Hulkenberg videos where you can see how he has his Cubase set up and has it all set up for his team as well. All right, so we see all right, so we see Daniela's see discussion between Jazz Dude and her, and she's working on Dolby Atmos stuff. So, all right, so we see from Paul Claridge, hello, Greg. Thanks for all you do here. You continue to help out tremendously. Well, thank you for the kind words. I'm glad to be able to help people. Yeah, and also Daniela, and I see Jazz Dude kind of mentioning this, that if let's say if we have a number of tracks, so let's say if we go here to this project and we wanted to have a number of tracks that were, like I don't necessarily have to have, I'm not sure if you're running like Reverence as a convolution reverb, but what we could do is I'm going to add, let's say, an effects channel track here. So just do it to the selected channel. So now this one reverb, so now if I take my different sources here, I can say, okay, I want my kick. So I will just come directly over here and say, okay, I want to take all of these tracks. And then I'm going to activate Quick Link. And we'll go to our sends and say, okay, I want to take this all to my one reverence. So instead of this way, all the tracks are going to a single instance of reverence. So everything is going here. So if I just say, let's get to my snare. Then as my snare kind of kicks in, and let's say if I want to go to the bottom snare mic, so we could send multiple tracks to one convolution reverb, so there's no need to run an insert of the convolution reverb on every single track. Okay. All right, so we see a question from Paul Claridge. Hi, Greg. When I'm in an editor window, the name of the track shows up in the top left of the screen and prevents me from positioning the cursor in that area. How do I get that out of the way? So let's say if I'm here and we see kind of the name here, you'll see this little icon. All right, let me just... All right, so when we're in kind of the full screen, you'll see this little icon here to show part borders. So turn that on and off right there. So let's say if we go back, so we see where the name shows up here. And if we're in the lower zone, I'll just hide a couple of things here. So you'll see it just here, this little icon in the lower zone. So let me know if it's in the MIDI editor, but you could just kind of come right over here and turn that on and off right there. My chat field just jumped on me. All right, so Greg, so question from Patrick. How many layers should we add to get great vocals? How many layers do pop artists and finest producers vocal mixing techniques? I've seen sometimes where it's one track on great sessions. Like one of my friends who did a bunch of James Taylor records. He's like, yeah, you could just throw an SM57 up and you know what? He'll sound like James Taylor. It'll be great. Where I see a lot of stacking going on is like background vocals. So my friend Clay Oswald, I remember being in a session with him. He was working on a demo for a girl, and he was with his friend Tommy, his partner at the time, who's like the touring guitar player with Santana, an incredibly talented guy, phenomenal guitarist, vocalist, drummer. And, they would often do kind of like 3 stacks of background vocals and pan them. So they would do kind of like 3 different vocal recordings, make sure that the tuning was good and it was a good performance rhythmically. There's obviously tools to do that. And then they would just often pan those. So if you look at, I think what Queen would do is all 3 of them. Roger Taylor, Brian May, and Freddie Mercury would sing all the harmony parts together, and they would do like 3 different takes of the harmonies, 1 pan center, 1 pan to the left, 1 pan to the right, and that's how they kind of got the the Queen backup vocal sound. And sometimes, if you listen to a lot of Mutt Lange work, he may do more but sometimes you just have one track and it still sounds great. So it can really depend. Sometimes as you get into layers, you get into kind of, when you're doing like 100 tracks, you can get into diminishing returns where the value starts to go down after a while, and you kind of lose the original impact of the original vocal performance. So it can vary, and it's kind of what the song really calls for. All right, you see Spike Williams is moving house. That's always not fun at all, but hopefully you'll have a nice space for your studio. So it's like the worst thing ever. So I don't want to move for many years. We did a big move about 3 years ago. So this is hopefully our forever house. So we've been very happy here. But we hope everything goes well with your move. All right, and we have Dwight checking in from Calgary, Canada. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question from the Drumhead 54. Hi, Greg. Could you explain setting up the control room and headphone mixing? Using the control room, I have a little trouble grasping this feature. All right, so let's jump back to this project. All right. All right, so let's say we have like a typical band project here. We're going to have like bass, drums. All right, so say we have like vocals, drums, guitars, and we want to do a headphone mix so that, to help the person that we are recording. So, and often they want to hear like a more me headphone mix, so they hear more of themselves over the rest of the backing tracks. I got some cheap wine. So let's say I want to send it for, you have our bass player that's tracking, just because it's all on one track here. So we're going to go to our studio menu and go to audio connection. So we're going to activate the control room. So we want to right click and we will see add Q mix. So as soon as we come over here, we're going to have Q mix for vocals, guitars, bass. So I'm going to come over here, and what I want to do now is to send this Q mix out to different outputs. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to send this out of outputs 2, or outputs 3 and 4 in my audio interface. Okay, so we have our main monitor outputs under monitors, and then we're going to have kind of a secondary path, like a secondary audio output, because these need to be 2 distinct separate outputs that are going into, so in this one for the headphones would often be fed into the headphone out of your audio interface, or to 2 analog outputs fed into a headphone amp. And there's a number of inexpensive headphone amps that are available to use. So now what we want to do is to come over and set up a separate mix. And we can do this easily in kind of the large mix console. So we want to go to the racks and make sure that Q sends is turned on. So I'm going to take all of my tracks here. I'm going to select all the tracks in my project. And we're going to go to the racks, make sure Q sends is turned on. And then I'll just make these all a little wider. And we're going to activate Q link. I'm going to right click here in the headphones, in the headphone area, and let's go to all Qs, and then we'll say let's activate the Q sends. Okay, so I'm going to enable, they're all turned on. So right click again in the blank area, and let's use the current mix settings. So what this is going to do is basically take the settings onto faders and apply that and copy it directly to our cue mixes so that everything is kind of starting off in the same spot. All right, so now we've done that. So I'm going to go directly over to my cue mixes. So we'll come over here to main, and let's say I want to go to the bass cue mix. So the bass player wants to hear more of himself and let's say more of the kick drum. So as we zoom in a little bit here, when I adjust this is sending this track more to the bass player. All right, so at this point I'm going to take off my cue link and say we're going to send more bass to the bass player, and the bass player wants to hear the kick. So we're going to send the kick drum more to the bass player. So if we want to listen to the cue mix, this is what the mix is in the control room. But when we go to our bass player's headphone mix, we'll come over here. So now the bass player may say, oh, I want a little more guitar in my headphone mix. So you'll come over here and just say, okay, we're going to take our rhythm guitar and say, okay, we're going to send more of the guitar into the bass player's headphone mix. And he says, oh, give me more snare. So we go find our snare and we send a snare directly to. And now when we go to listen to our mix, that's preserved where we want. And we could do the same for the vocalist, for the drummer, for the guitarist, and just come over here and have independent headphone mixes. So we could listen to what the bass player is listening to, what's going on in the control room. And so that's how we could set up different cue mixes for different musicians as we go along. So give that a shot. It's an incredibly powerful feature of Cubase. All right. So we see from Patrick, Greg, do I need to take a course to learn about sound design or engineering? Because some suggesting to learning sound design is the only way to succeed. Do you know any composers who don't have any course on sound? So a lot of times, composers will get into sound design to have a unique sound. I know a lot of people, a lot of composers, like I know Hans, what he does is, like he has a new project, he's going to come up with all new, fresh sounds for that particular project. So it's almost like a palette. So he's going to have kind of like his basic orchestra stuff will be pretty consistent. But like, when he's doing, like I remember he was telling me like when he did Sherlock Holmes, like, and I think there's even a YouTube video where they're sampling, kind of like smashing a piano in a parking garage that was empty. So it'd have like, these amazing reverb sounds. So they will often, come up with unique, fresh sounds. And that's why the sampler track is so compelling to a lot of people, because you could just simply take, different components and drag and drop it into the sampler and just come up with a unique sound that could be really, almost like just a, almost a different character within a particular film, and use that in a musical way so that you could have a unique voice for each particular project. Now, if the project is successful, you need to be able to recall those particular sounds in case there's a sequel. So, but, some people will just be like straight composers. But I think the really interesting thing is being, into sound design. It's not a requirement. And, as you just kind of work and you want to, like I know like Stevie Wonder, when he gets a new keyboard, he just, blows out all the presets, and they will make fresh new presets for every keyboard. And that, I know you used to do that so that It wouldn't be like, oh, you use this particular preset from this instrument. It's like, no, I made, every single preset so it's uniquely me. So, if someone wants to have the same sound, they have to work at it. So they don't want to have like a preset type of workflow. So, creating your own sounds is a really great way to build up your own voice, but you could get started without being a great sound designer. All right. We have Blaine Johnston saying hello. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being on the live stream. And we have Mark Winslow from Hawaii. Spike Williams just recommending that, throwing samples into Pad Shop is a great way to get sound designs. Right. See, Bruce is just saying that with all the rain in California, this backyard is a muddy swamp. We hope it all goes. We hope that at least it can help with your diminished water situation. All right, Mark Winslow just says, can I create a key command to add to the mixdown macro to detect and delete tracks with nothing on them before the mixdown executes? All right, so let's say... All right, I'll just come over here to more manageable project. So I think there's a way of doing it. All right, so let me just add a couple of instrument tracks that will be empty. Okay, so let's say I just have empty tracks in my project. All right, so when we do our export audio mixdown, right, there is a function to, so we do multiple to sync selection to channel selection. Okay, so if we have only like particular channels selected, so let's say we only have these channels, and I click that would hide that. So let's create a macro to hide all the channels. Okay, so we can do this in a project logical editor. I haven't done this in a while, but okay, so we're going to select container type is equal to track, and we'll say the property is set to track is empty. So what this is going to do is automatically select empty tracks. And now what I could do, or we could just, I think this would work too. So let's say tracks are equal to is not set to is empty. So now I could come over here. We could select all the tracks that have data. And then when we go into our export audio mixdown, at this point we just say, and then that would just show only tracks that have data on them when you just activate this particular button. So if you want to come over and just say container, you want to select we want to say container type is equal to tracks, and then property is not set to event is empty. So that will select all tracks that aren't empty, and then again go to export audio mix down and just turn on this sync selection to selected tracks right there. So let me know if that helps. I'll just save this as a preset. So let me know if that helps. It makes sense. All right. Okay, so we see from Michael Romanowski at Coast Mastering. In Wavelab, is there a way to auto-place PQ markers for only the selected track and not all? Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so let's say if I have this, let's see if we get to the CD. All right, let me just see if we could add it from markers here. So I'm not sure if this, like if we could put kind of the CD marker there, but if you want to email me, Michael, I could dive into it a little bit after the live stream. But if, please email me and I'll see if I can get it figured out for you. Sorry about that. All right, so we see all right, so we see my question. My backing track records on my Vox track. Can you help? So make sure that, I often hear of this when someone has like maybe a USB mixer that they're using as their audio interface. So if you're doing that, make sure that you have the audio return not going out of the audio, so sometimes you may have if it's like a USB mixer or USB microphone, you may have the output of the audio interface, being sent out of the same audio path that's being recorded. So if you could let us know what type of audio interface that you have, that could help. But basically, sometimes it's going to be like headphone bleed. So if you have a very sensitive condenser microphone and you have the headphones cranked up and are not closed ear headphones, that you may hear a lot of bleed that way. Other times it's the audio device, like through a mixer, maybe just sending the playback audio out through the same path that the microphone is connected. And a lot of times you may have like a separate, monitor channel, to the DAW that doesn't go out that same path that the vocal is being recorded to. All right. So you see Michael's question about Wavelab. Is there a way to auto place peak? No, I'm sorry. Is there a way to have the cursor and audio show in the center over the window instead of all the way to the left, preference or setting? And it's not auto scrolling. I mean, when moving to new track or segment, they always show the playhead on the far left. All right. So let me jump back to Wavelab. Okay, so let's say if I select this track, okay, so say when moving to new track or segment, they always show the playhead on the far left. So let me just say, if we navigate over to this segment. So I'm not sure if when you click with, if you're in the montage, that when you click, that this would automatically go to wherever you click the playhead position. So if you play, you can just but let me know if that's what you're talking about, Michael, and if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to kind of dig into it a little further after the live stream. Hope you're doing well. Happy New Year. All right, so I see Valley just asking if I skipped his question on the Steinberg SDK. So let me see if I could find it again. I'll just scroll back. But feel free to ask it again. Okay. All right. So we see. So you see the question. Sorry about that. Can you show how to correctly install Steinberg SDK running into errors a lot? So, there is a software development kit for, for plugins, but let me know if you're looking for the software, which SDK that you're looking for. There's an SDK for plugins. There's an API for the MIDI remote, but let me know, Valley, which SDK you're wanting to have access to. Okay, just scrolling back, trying to find my spot. It's a great comment from Michael Romanowski. Says about moving. Like a friend of mine says from his last move, next time he moves, he won't need to pack. So I hope to be that way. So, but after my last move, I'm trying not to buy a lot of stuff that I would have to pack either. So we had a rule in our family that, you know, if you bought something new, you had to get rid of something after paying a bunch of money to just have stuff thrown away from previous houses. Okay. All right. So I think I just see cool. That helps a lot. He has a 6-channel headphone amp. I think with the control room, using the for headphone mixes through the control room. All right. Wonderful to see Graham Witcher on the live stream. Just reading through comments here. All right, so see question. Hey, I want to share my screen and audio too, but audio doesn't be shared. I try Facebook Messenger, share screen, Discord, and TeamViewer. What can I do? So, you know, it depends on your audio interface. Realize that if you're doing it in Cubase, that you probably have, I'm not sure if you're on Windows or Mac, but, you know, the audio, if you're on Windows, the audio interface driver, you know, is ASIO as opposed to like a Windows-based, like Direct Music sound card. So what a lot of interfaces will allow you to do, depending on your audio interface, you could have like my UR24C, I have a UR242C, and we could set this up to do a loop back, and that would then allow you to take the audio of a microphone and what's playing out of Cubase and send that directly into your live stream setup for, like, you know, what I'm using, OBS or Zoom. I use personally is 2 different audio interfaces. I have a USB mixer with my microphone connected to it, and I take the audio out of my audio interface from Cubase and feed it into that, and that way I could change sample rates, and it's much easier when I have to juggle so many balls to make the live stream happen, not to worry about that. But you could do a loop back, but it's mostly a limitation of, you know, what's going on in your with the audio ins of the particular, like, you know, Facebook Live, Facebook Messenger, and those different types of streaming services. So check that out, you know. So see if your audio interface has a loopback, and that's really designed to do that for you very easily. So it could be a limitation of your audio interface. Okay, just reading through comments. just reading through comments. All right, so we just see a question from Sable. Any idea why when I export to render from within Cubase 12 Pro to open in Wavelab 10, Wavelab stopped opening? Attempted to open Wavelab independently is now also ignored. Nothing happens. So let me know if you are, I'm not sure if you're doing it on Mac. So I'm not sure if you're running in Mac M1 mode. And if so, you would need Wavelab 11 to be M1 native for that. But if I wanted to just take a small section here and let's export it to Wavelab. So I'll come over here to the audio mix down. And we'll just do single, and we'll do post-process of open in Wavelab Pro 11. And then we have the audio file just kind of imported directly over. So if you're running Mac, make sure, you may have to run Wavelab in Rosetta mode, and but so just test that. But it seems like everything's kind of working for me with that. Okay, so we see a question from DL White. In the audio warp tool mode, I get the message, no tempo editing possible. Tempo track is turned off. What's tempo track? Noticed one word spelling. All right, so if I wanted to do warping here, so say if I switch over to my free warp tool, and let's say I drop in some warp markers. Here that I could freely kind of do the warping on my project window like that. So if I just say, okay, let's just take this warp marking, and then you could try to with the metronome, with that particular message, maybe you want to just activate the particular tempo map as well. So if you just wanted to come over, let's just where we could activate the tempo. So let's say even if you add a tempo track and then see if you just turn it on and off there, if that makes a difference. So now with my tempo map enabled, I could come over here and do that, but just try adding the tempo track and see if you turn it on and off, if that makes a difference for you. All right. See, Valley just says, funny side comment, the Austrian concert hall gets passed by me almost every day on his way to work. So I guess that's with the Reverence convolution. So I always wanted to go there and see a concert. Okay, so we see from Sable Winters that it's running. She's running Windows 11. Yeah, so I'll try it on my Windows setup, but it seems to work on my Mac. and so version 10 was only 64-bit. But yeah, I'll try it right after. If you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'll try it on my Windows setup, but I'm pretty sure it's kind of working. As I just did it the other day. See, Valley has a touristic idea of visiting all the places in the Revolution impulses. So, yeah, it'd be a musical tour. So I think someone at Yamaha got to do that many years ago. But only if Greg gives us the host. So I would just attend. All right, so I think I'm caught up. I know we had some questions that were mailed in, so we'll go ahead and get to those. Thanks for all the questions. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure that you do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And all right, so jump over. All right, so we had a question. How to sync existing MIDI tracks after tempo detection. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this up. Okay, so let's say if we're like we have an existing MIDI part and then we do a tempo detection of audio, and we need to have that automatically kind of show up and have the MIDI sync to the tempo that was derived from this particular event. So let's say right now, if we listen to the tempo map with this particular track, we can say that the tempo isn't lined up to it. But if we go back to this MIDI event here, that when we look at this MIDI event is lined directly up with the event. So what we want to do is figure out the tempo of this particular event and have this pre-existing MIDI event follow the derived tempo of the audio so that it matches up. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go to the track settings here in the inspector, the top inspector, and I'm going to lock this particular event. So so my MIDI track is locked. I'm going to select the audio event here and do our tempo detection from project menu. And we'll analyze, and this will make our tempo track. So we'll listen to it, and we'll just say, all right, so that sounds in the ballpark. So let's say now I want to come over here. We're going to put I think we have like a little, before the downbeat of the first bar, like a pickup note. All right, so what we want to do now is and let me just make sure I locked that MIDI event. Okay, so now, and we'll come over to our editor. All right, so now we look at this. We see that our MIDI notes are lined up, and now I'm going to say, let's put our clock. So I'm going to just say this is our downbeat here. And I'm going to start this MIDI event kind of right there. So now that we locked the event first, so now the tempo that was derived from the MIDI event, this MIDI track is now following it. So if we come over here to our mixer, we could blend these in. So, but if we didn't lock the tempo, what would happen, just to show you? So now we look at the events and we'll look at it in like a drum editor, and we can see that these are just going to be lined perfectly up. But if we chose to do without locking the events, all the drum events would shift after the tempo detection. So this is what would happen. So we do our tempo detection. And now we can see that our drums from the original position have now all kind of shifted out of time. So to prevent that from happening, to prevent that part from automatically following the tempo, lock it first. Then do the tempo detection. Analyze it. Find a downbeat. We'll just do it here. All right. And now that we unlock it, just kind of drop it on the grid. And now this track will automatically follow the tempo of the audio. So that's how you could do that. So, okay, so I think we covered next question already. All right, so we have a question. Hey, I was wondering what your recommendations is for changing configurations are. I have a large orchestral-based template where I constantly add instrument tracks into different folders. I utilize the configurations function in Cubase. However, whenever I add a new track to my template, the track appears in every configuration. Is there a way to set that so that only one specific folder is shown per configuration? Perhaps I have a folder that holds all my strings. When I hit the string configuration, I only want that folder to be shown and not another track I added to, say, my woodwinds folder recently. Okay, so if we have, let's say, kind of more of an orchestral aspect, okay, so let's say I want to take these and I'm going to create folders for my templates. So, so what you could do is kind of use a project logical editor for this as opposed to configurations. So let's say now if I come over here and I'm going to add some folder tracks just to create this. So we will say, okay, I'm going to move selected tracks to new folder, and we will call this wind. And then I'm going to take these tracks and we're going to take my brass tracks. And we'll move these to a new folder. So we'll just say, okay. And this will be called brass. And let's say my strings. So I'm going to take these and add them to my strings folder. Okay. So let's say, okay, so we have our folders directly here. So let's say I add a track. Okay, so I'm here, and so we'll just show this now. Let's go to our project logical editor, and let's go to setup. And I think I have this as a preset. All right, so we're gonna come over here, and first I want to I'm gonna put in 2 conditions. All right, so regardless of now, so instead of using like different channel, if I only want to see my winds elements in my winds folder, or if I only want to see elements in my strings folder, I could come over here. So let's say in this, I'm going to say select. I'm going to set up 2 conditions. One is the channel and track visibility to show all, and the second condition is project/folding unfold tracks. Then I said we're going to open up a container type of a folder track, and we're going to say the name contains brass. Okay, so now when I come here, and then after that, we're going to go to channel and track visibility, show selected. Okay, so now when I do this, if I have my tempo track selected, it's going to open it up. It's going to unfold all the tracks. It's going to show all of the tracks, and that's important when we do this when we go to a different preset. And then we can say my container type is folder track, and we're going to open up the brass and hide the other and show only the selected tracks. So I come over here, I hit this now, and we say apply. Then I only see my brass, and let me just smooth this up first. So, all right, so at that point we could just see only like the brass. And if I switch this to winds, I will say let's come over here, and now we can see, and let me just make sure I have the right. All right, and let's say, okay, I want to go to strings. If I have this right setting here, let me just take this out. Now let's say I added a track, so I want to show all of my tracks here. So I added an instrument track, and we'll call this, all right, so let's say I add a pad shop track, and I add a couple of audio tracks. All right, so now when I wanted to only see what's in my strings folder, it's still only showing what's in the strings folder. So maybe you could set up a project logical editor condition to do this, and that way it's, as opposed to a channel configuration visibility, that you could do this without the other tracks showing up that have been added. They're not automatically added unless you specifically add them into the folder. So give that a shot. All right, so we had a question. I was wondering if you offer any official advanced Cubase training programs or certification. I always appreciate the support material, like the YouTube channel and forums. However, could really benefit from a structured program that dives into advanced Cubase concepts that may not be apparent to me. So there's lots of schools that do this. So, Berkeley Online does this. For us, it's tough because, we're creating the software. So then having to update the course all the time. So there's a lot of third-party partners that do this, but check out the Berklee Online courses. Kevin Doucette is the instructor. He's done a lot of work for Steinberg, like on a part-time basis for trade shows, and is a product specialist, and he's a wonderful instructor. So you could definitely check out some of the different courses. Check out the Berklee Online course, and there's people that do that remotely online year-round. So check that out. All right. So we had a email sent. I thought I followed your instructions in the last live stream to quantize all drums in the project window. But it didn't work. So let's go ahead and go through those again slowly. So let's come over to go back to this project here. Okay, I'm gonna revert it. Okay, so let's say we want to quantize our drums to make them tighter to the beat. So we may have like a drum fill coming here. So if we turn on our click, so we get here where it's a little off. So let's say here's the snare fill here. That's definitely kind of rushed. So if we're going to be like very precise and picky about it, we will come over. So let's find kind of like if we wanted to quantize the drums, we're going to go to our hit points. And the concept here is we're going to activate the hit points and just kind of find the rhythmically significant points so that when we look at our hit points, we're not getting tracks that are bleeding through. So we can see the toms, we don't want to catch those with the hit points. And let's go to our snare top and kind of do the same thing. So we have the hi-hats kind of bleeding in. And say maybe a little higher threshold. And let's do the same for the hi-hat here. Okay, so now that we have done that, we'll come over to we're going to place these all into a folder track, and we could apply group editing. So now when we double click, we could kind of see all of our different tracks, and we're going to go to open up the quantize panel. So we want to select our different tracks that will be our priorities. So we'll say, okay, I want kick as a high priority. I want my snare, and let's say the hi-hat. So this is going to create the slices for us and assign the priorities. And now what we're going to do is slice the audio. Okay, I have this in musical mode, so let me just take it out of musical mode here real quick. Okay. All right, so we've now sliced all of our drums based on these priorities. We're going to choose our quantized value. We'll say 16th note. And then we're going to choose quantize. And as we do this, you'll notice that there will be probably little gaps as we do this. So we're going to say quantize. And as we do this, and we zoom in, we'll see that there will be different areas that may have gaps in them. Like here, we can see, okay, there's gaps. And now what we need to do is to crossfade all of those gaps like so. So now we listen to it and our drums are quantized. Just like that. So that's all you have to do. So once again, define the priorities, and then we could come to set your define the priorities. Or first, find the hit points, enable group editing, define the priorities, set your quantize value, quantize. So you're going to click on slice. Then we're going to quantize those slices to 16th notes, and at that point, do a crossfade between them. So, and then your drums can be all cleaned up for you. All right, so we have a question. Hello, Greg. Can you please review the process for recording the click as an audio track in the same project? Okay, so let's say I want to, I'm going to set my left and right locators around all of the projects. So I'll just come over here and hit the letter P. So if I go to my project menu, and let's say we have the click track here, and I want the click track to be rendered as an audio file, I can come over to my signature track from the project menu, and I'll say render audio click between locators. Then this will create a new audio track, and as we listen to it here, we'll just go ahead and solo only the click track, and I'll make sure that the click is turned off in the transport. That we now will just have our click track just automatically just rendered as our file. So just try that one more time. I probably had something soloed. So again, project, signature, track, render audio click between left and right locators. And then that's all you'd have to do. So second part of the question was how to record the final mix down to a stereo track within the same project to be used as a reference track for archival purposes. So when we come over here, we'll do our export to audio mix down, and then so I'm going to choose, we want to just do our stereo out, and after export, we're going to say create audio track. So file menu to export audio, you want to do a single file and preferably our stereo out. And then I'm just going to make sure that no tracks here are selected. So file, export audio mix down, stereo out, and then after export, create audio track. So we'll come over here, export file. All right, and now we have our mixdown project, or mixdown file, all just laid out for us right here. So that's our mixdown file. All right, and I think this is from Jean-Marie Horvat. So it says contact 7, no multi-out, but I see it in other native instruments. So probably what you need to do, and I don't have contact on my computer, is just come over to, if you go to we add the VST instrument. So let's say if I add, I'm going to add a instrument, and let's say, okay, I want it to be Hallian 6. All right, so now if I want to add multiple outputs, look in the VST rack here on the right-hand zone, and you could just say activate outputs, And this would show you all of the available outs for that particular instrument. All right, so we see question like how to do multiple recordings not using lanes and recording tracks like in Pro Tools. So I'm not familiar how, but I think it may be with like playlist maybe. So if we want to do, let's say, an audio track recording, so I'll just do a quick add an audio track. So let me know if this is kind of what you're imagining, Jean-Marie. Sorry, I don't know all the terminology of. So let's say I have this selected, and let's say I'm just doing a quick recording here, and I'll just set up for a punch in and out by hitting I and O on my keyboard. So let's say I'm doing a recording here, and we have it punch in and punch out. So we did one recording, and we don't want to use lanes. So as we kind of work with this, what we can do now is, again, have it punch in. Okay, let's do it a couple more times. So as it's recording, it's kind of just stopping so we don't hear the pre-existing recording. Okay, but before I do this, I should come over here, and if we just click here and do new version, at this point, I could just, before doing the recording, so I say, let's do a new version. And again, a new version. So now we could just switch between our different versions. And I think in Pro Tools terminology, this might be playlists, but you could just kind of come here and we could do that for a single track or multiple tracks and have different track versions. So let me know if that's kind of what the concept you were thinking of, Jean-Marie. All right, let's go back to our live questions. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. Again, you could submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so let's come over to your questions. All right. Find my spot where I was. All right, reading through comments, we see that Michael Teams wants to go to the Royal Albert Hall. So maybe if you go, Michael Pierce could show you. You could take a tour of London and go there if you want. But that's what I did when I was in London many years ago. All right, so we see Danielle has to go. She has an early shift tomorrow. So thanks for joining us on the live stream today. Okay, still reading through comments. So see Gerald Ely just says create audio track from Mixdown, his tip of the day. So that's good. All right, so Michael Pierce's soup recipe is mushroom boil. Yes, 900 grams of sliced mushrooms dry. Add butter and fry. Meanwhile, gently fry onions, garlic, and potato. Save some mushrooms and mix rest with other mixture and 2 liters of stock. And it's going to be continued. And chiffonade a handful of basil and a half 300 grams of smetana sour cream. Blend and remaining mushrooms, basil, and season. It sounds like a great soup recipe. Thanks for sharing. We see Michael Pierce has been learning some Ukrainian while he's hosting people from Ukraine. All right, so I have a question. Is there a way to turn the volume of the click track up? Yeah, so let's say if we come here, so we could just say, just mute this. So let's say I have just my drums going on. So let's say, so we go to our transport menu and go to metronome setup. So if we go to, I think, click sounds, there's an audio click level here. So you could adjust the level. And then if you have the control room activated, you could come over. So let's say we go to our control room. You could also adjust your click level here. Or if you've rendered it as a click track, if you still need it louder, so let's say we're here. And then now when we go to our click track, it's just an audio track. So if my click is turned off here, I could just come here into the mixer. And then we could add more gain if necessary. So you could, a couple easy ways of making your click track louder, but rendering it's always a great solution. Great. All right, so I think I'm at the end of questions. We'll see if there's more questions that sneak in. So we'll just wait a couple minutes. Thanks everyone for wonderful questions, and thank you for Michael Teams for giving virtual ice creams and Michael Pierce for sharing soup recipes. I always look forward to those. All right, let's see if more questions come in. There's usually about a 20 or 30 second delay from when I talk to when it goes out, but we'll wait just a little bit. See Michael Pierce talking about dodgy clubs. All right, you see Nick is going to go play with all his presets that he got with his Absolute 5 collection. Now, Nick, he also had to go and make 5,000 new presets from the instrument. Okay, I'll wait another 10 seconds or so. I'll see if any of our questions kind of sneak in. If not, we'll wrap up a little early. All right, so with that, we will. All right, so I just see, can we have a question? Can we have a recording template with stock plugins? So if you actually just kind of start off here, we can say, okay, let's go to new project. These are different kind of production templates that you could use with stock plugins. So you could check those out. All right. All right, we see Best Green Jesus. Glad you could join the live stream. All right, so with that, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks everyone for wonderful questions, and we'll see everyone on Friday. I get the gold trophy from Agent K, so I did my job well. Thanks everyone for wonderful questions. Hope you all learned something new and interesting, and look forward to seeing everyone again on Friday. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you then. Bye.